Hello and a very warm welcome. My name's David Roth from WPP, and it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you to Follow the Sun, 24 hours of broadcasting right across the world to celebrate the launch of the WPP BAV Best Country Study for 2021, done in conjunction with US News and the Wharton Business School. It's a pleasure to have you join us for this section. Of course, this broadcast is going to be right across the world. We're starting in Australia and New Zealand, and we'll be ending at the end of the 24-hour period in the USA. Well, we've got an absolutely packed broadcast today, and I'd like to start off by introducing Mike Sussman from BAV. Mike has been the brainchild behind the Best Country Studies for many years, and there's nobody better to put the Best Country Study into context. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you, David. We're really excited about the launch of the 2021 Best Countries study. It's the most comprehensive study of the power of nation brands. We've been doing this for 6 years, covering countries that represent 95% of the global GDP and about 75% of the world's population. So an amazing coverage. This year, we're looking at 78 countries. We spoke to over 17,000 business decision makers, citizens, and elites around the world. And we've ranked countries on a battery of metrics, including 26 key rankings that we'll talk about throughout this report and throughout the app. One thing we've seen over time is the shifting impact of soft power. It's becoming more and more important to driving the power of a country, while hard power, like banks and tanks, as we call it, the more traditional power, is becoming less impactful on the success of a nation. When we think about the power of a nation, we think about 10 key dimensions, and you can look at each of these ranks and how a country does on these things, from entrepreneurship to cultural influence to quality of life. We've introduced 2 new ones that are becoming more and more important today in these changing dynamics of culture. One of those is how purposeful, how socially purposeful is a nation. And the second is how agile is a nation, how responsive it is to things, particularly during a COVID era. And both of those dimensions are extremely important in driving the GDP and the success of a nation. Agile nations are seen as 3 times more likely to be a better job market. They're rated 3.2 times more likely as being economically influential. They are more connected to the rest of the world. So agile nations are doing something to resonate with people globally. Really important to mention, and it's the biggest driver now of GDP. And that's something that the nations need to be more and more of today. So when you think about agility, the top nations around the world this year are USA, number 1 in terms of being an agile country, followed by Australia, and in 3rd place is Canada. We continue to see the rising power of purpose, not just for brands, but also for nations. In fact, purposeful nations are 57% more likely to be considered for tourism, 55% more likely to be considered as a place to do business. So it's important to be seen as a purposeful and socially responsible country. Number 1 on this purposeful dimension is Canada, followed by Denmark, and in 3rd place is New Zealand out of 78. So pretty impressive, pretty strong dimensions, very important. We also see the power and impact of brands that resonate from countries. In fact, 79.5% of citizens say that consumer brands play an important role in defining a country's culture. So there's a strong relationship between the brands and the nation. We also see that 78.6% of citizens say that the country a product is made in impacts their preference for a brand. So you can see that interplay between brand and country and how important it is today. And we started measuring the power of what does it mean to be made in a specific country. What does made in America mean, and made in China? And we can rank the power of these nations in terms of their exports. So, for instance, Germany ranks number 1 in terms of the country you'd want to buy an automobile from. They also dominate on pharmaceuticals and beer. So you can see a little bit of a balanced power of that nation. Italy is number 1 on fashion. So that's the top brand for when you're thinking about buying fashion brands. France owns cosmetics. In terms of the best countries for real estate, Canada ranks number 1, followed by the United States and then France. So overall, again, you can see how the building blocks of a nation affect its overall ranking. And we're excited to share some more details with you. Back to you, David.
Well, now it's time to get an overview of the key insights from the 2021 study on a global perspective. And who better to do that for us than Professor David Ribstein from Wharton University. Professor Ribstein has been our partner in this study since it started, and his unique understanding and unique perspective of countries, of brands, and what's driving GDP growth is unrivaled. So let's hear from David now.
Hello, I'm Dave Reibstein. I'm a marketing professor at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. I've been involved with the Best Country Study since its inception. This year has been a different year. It's been a transformational year. There's been many things that have affected how we view countries and how we live our particular lives. First and foremost, obviously, we've had to deal with the COVID-19 and the tragic loss of millions of lives all around the world. Accompanying this has been the huge impact on economies of various different countries, leading to an overall global recession. Some countries have handled the pandemic well, such as South Korea and Taiwan and several others, whereas other countries have not handled it nearly as well. Accompanying this pandemic has been the subsequent vaccine distribution. And this has required acquisition of vaccines as well as some form of equitable distribution of those. Perhaps Israel has been the country that has done the best at it. There are others that are catching up, but there are other countries that are still struggling today with trying to manage the vaccine distribution. A third major thing that's been happening this year has been the Black Lives movement that originated in the United States and has found it in various other countries all around the world. Climate impact has been a major event that's happened in various different countries. Perhaps the most notable are the brush fires that happened in Australia. We've seen other events, such as the explosions that happened in the Beirut port, killing millions of lives. And of course, we could not ignore Brexit and the impact that's had on the British economy, as well as the economies of Europe. Many, many events have made this year an exceptional year. And it's part of what it is that we've all had to adjust to. Perhaps the greatest impact, of course, has been the pandemic. And what we have witnessed as individuals is we see that how we buy and where we shop, that's changed. How we work, many of us working from home, some of us not having jobs. So there's been a dramatic impact for individuals, where we eat and how we interact with family and friends, dramatically affected, and we've had to adapt. Businesses have had to adapt as well. And what they have had to do is how they connect with their customers has changed. Meetings have changed. The ability to have trade shows dramatically affected. The whole supply chain has been disrupted. And certain industries, such as the hospitality industries or the airline industry, have been dramatically affected, with sporting events being canceled throughout the world. So many, many industries have suffered as a result. And when I've talked to business leaders, almost inevitably, what it is that they tell me is they've needed to be agile. And it sort of is the buzzword that I hear from companies. But that's not restricted to just individuals and companies. Countries have had to adapt as well. And what it is that we have seen is we see, obviously, trying to get the healthcare systems up to speed and handling with this medical crisis that we've got. And getting medical supplies to the hospitals and to individuals has also been an issue. But trying to cope with the unemployment levels and trying to deal with that and supporting the local governments has been a major issue for countries all around the world. And what countries have had to do they've had to adapt as well. Well, we too at the Best Country Study have had to go through our own adaptations. We've added 13 new attributes that we use for evaluating countries, and we have taken one of the previous dimensions, that of citizenship, and we have morphed it into a dimension that we call social purpose. And what is social purpose? It has many of the dimensions that we had in citizenship, but it also includes dimensions such as human rights and racial equality and social justice and climate concern, that have all been attributes that now feed into the social purpose dimension. And we've added a new dimension. And this new dimension, this new overall factor is one of course, agility. And what is it that we have feeding into agility? Our perceptions of countries in terms of their adaptability and in terms of responsiveness and how progressive they are and how modern they happen to be and how dynamic they are, all feed into this agility dimension. So with that said, let's take a look at the latest rankings that we have.
Hello, my name is Victor Garzon, and I am the head of strategy of Wonderman Thompson Peru. I'm really glad to be here today. I'm really glad to have you all here this time of the day, and I'm really glad to be part of this amazing schedule that has been done and brought to you by WBP today. The first thing is I want to inspire a conversation and round why it's important to make visible the need for gender equality in a complex context like the Peruvian one. But before that, and before showing you some cases that we have been working with one of our main clients, the Scotiabank, I want to make like a point on why we consider this a very complex context for gender equality. The first thing we need to understand is like 7 out of 10 Peruvians think, I'm going to talk just about gender gaps and gender inequality. 7 out of 10 Peruvians believe that women should stay at home. That data is provided by a study done in 2017 by the INEI, the Institute of National Economical and Information, Statistics and Information from Peru. That's the way 7 out of 10. It's not men, it's not women, it's all. 7 out of 10 Peruvians believe women should stay at home. It's where they belong. So it's the kind of society we're dealing with. It's the kind of context we're dealing with. Peruvian is not only complex. Peru is not only complex because of its economics or politics or social issues. It's very complex too in gender and inequality issues too. So we need to work around. So, since 2017, we have been working with Scotiabank in several different campaigns that address payment gaps in Peru between men and women. These kind of campaigns are done in the celebration or in the context of International Women's Day. But before getting deeper in the cases, I want to make some data points that can allow you to understand the complexity we are talking about. The first thing is when we talk about payment gaps, Peru has one of the highest, if not the highest, payment gap in all Latin America, 29.6%. It's the payment gap between men and women in this country. But this gap has been reducing in the last 10, 11 years. Not too much, but a little bit. So what's like a progress? Around 3% is what have been decreasing in the last, since 2008 and 2018-19. And what's a decrease of 3%, 3.5%, something like that. But when we see the progress we have been achieving, or the country has been achieving in the last 10, 11 years, suddenly in 2020, the pandemic arrives and all the progress that have been achieved in developed countries have been taken backwards. Now we are taking 10 years back of gender development and gender equality in all developed countries. So it's really hard to know that in 10 years your work and the society and the country have been working for closing the gap, and it only have been moved 3%. And just in 1 year, or less than a year, you are going back 10 years. And why is that? Why it's so very hard and the numbers are so hard to hear? The first thing I need you to understand is that Peru has a complex context around working force. The working force in Peru, it's 70% informal, 70%, or 7 out of 10 jobs in Peru are informal jobs, and only 3 out of 10 are formal jobs. So it's like a very informal economy. And in this kind of economy, the bridge and the gaps tend to be higher than any other country with more formal working force or more parity working force around it. But when we see data from 2020 and around women, why is this making it complex or more complex to women now? We have seen that unemployment for women have increased, or it's 45% today. 45% of women that can actually work are without work. They don't have a job. They don't have a place to go and produce money. So that's going to make the payment gap and the gender gap higher, because it's going to bring control again to men and to take control of economical issues inside their own houses or inside their own context. And what we have seen is that it's really difficult now to recover that kind of employment in the next few years. Why? Because most of the women that work in the service and in commerce categories or job categories. So services and commerce are reduced. So opportunities in this kind of spaces are being reduced. And not only that, it's not only about unemployment and the ability of not having resources every single month or every 15 days. It's that work overload, it's gonna be more and have been more in the last 12 months. Women tend to do 3 times more activities and taking care of several things inside their house 3 times more than men. So when we compare and when we think that payment gap is a mixture of how much you gain in your work, how much time you work, and what amount of that hours invest in working of that women are being paid, and with that we calculate the payment gap, it's going to be hard, it's going to be bigger, it's going to increase, and it's not the way it's going to go backwards. So it's really important to help women and try to make them easier to find and to work and to understand the importance of gender gap. So when we see the statistics around closing, and we are going to concentrate because we're going to talk about bank. I'm going to be very focused on economical and salary and economical issues and around gender gap and payment gaps. But when we see the amount of years, the World Economic Forum says we need to close opportunities and participation in economy. For women, it's going to take us 257 years. We're talking of 2 centuries and a half to close economical disparities between men and women. So it's really hard. And this is the point when you see that brands needs to be part of change and need to take care and take into account the possibilities to help and take action to reduce and to inspire other companies to reduce payment and gender gaps. So, why is this important? Why I am talking about gender gap and gender equality? Because when we see the Sustainable Development Goals from the UN, none of them will be achieved without gender equality. Why is that? Because the direct impact women have in country GDP. So, if we can allow women to be part of our economical system, our economical development, and we make them part in an equal way that we treat men, we can see an increase in Latin America of the GDP just between 15 and 25%, just addressing gender gaps issues. So that's important. That's why important to address and to brands understand why they have to work and to fight for gender equality in this kind of countries. As the main secretary of the CEPAL, that it's the Commission of Economics for America Latina and the Caribbean, Antonio Prado said, "We believe that sustainable development without gender equality is not development nor sustainable." That's the words of Antonio Prado, Executive Secretary of the CEPAL. And it's really hard when you hear that data and when you see the expectancy that we're seeing in front of us, what we are facing in terms of gender equality and reducing the gaps between men and women. It's really hard and it's really easy to say, okay, it's going to be really hard to change it, so why we do it? We should, as brands, we should address something that can change easier, faster, more visible, not something that's so hard to change. But that's where it's important that brands be part of change, that brands can really help society to move forward and to understand what we need to move, where we need to move forward in order to have a better society. And here's where Scotiabank purpose arrives and connect with the context. We as a brand, as Scotiabank, we believe and we work every single day to help everybody build every future. We work for every future. And when we talk about the future and when we talk about sustainable development goals not being achieved just because the absence of gender equality, the future is at risk. So we as a bank, we needed to do something and to start changing something. That's why in 2017 we start several campaigns that have been doing since 2017 every single year around International Women's Day to address payment gaps in Peru and to generate awareness and to make some changes in society, to improve our society and make it better, to build a better future for everyone. So here's where the brand have to take role and make it a purpose, something they want to change, something they want to talk. When we receive, and we're going to talk now about the cases, when we received the first case, the price of equality case, the brief was simple. It was International Women's Day celebration, and they want to do something very tactical, but they want to do something. They want to say something. So when we came to our office and started talking about what should we do, the first thing we noticed is that the Peruvian context have lost the meaning and the purpose of International Women's Day. What we have been seeing the last before 2017 in this kind of celebration was messages very, very superficial, addressing different things that are not relevant to the fight of gender equality and rights, equality of rights that the International Women's Days have. So what we say to our clients is, okay, if we're going to do something, we are going to bring the purpose of the International Women's Day. It's going to be a fight. We have to fight for something. And U.S. Bank have to fight for economical parity, economical equality. And one of the expressions that's really hard and it's really an issue in society was payment gap. Because in Peru, it's 29.6%. So, as you're going to see in the next case, we address it in a very particular way, helping our clients to get that 20.96% and to make awareness of this kind of problematics and the kind of society we're living in. I'll leave you with the case, and then I'm going to discuss a little bit more.
Peru is the Latin American country with the highest wage gap between men and women. That gap is 29.2%. Scotiabank, one of the most important banks in the country, decided that it could help draw attention to this problem. That is why, on International Women's Day, Scotiabank went beyond simply giving a message of hope to becoming part of the change. Scotiabank presents the price of equality. On March 8th, we changed the prices of products and services from our affiliated stores all around the country. So when our female clients bought them, the products and services cost 29.2% less. A special percentage discount was given to all our female clients to illustrate the wage gap that continues to exist in Peru today. To illustrate wage inequality, we made prices fair to women. We printed Peruvian bills that showed a face amount of 29.2% less than normal to raise awareness of women's lower income compared with men's income. In only 24 hours, we got incredible results. We had an impact on more than 7 million people. Millions of people became aware of the gender wage gap. This campaign achieved an average of 1,600% more shares than competitors' campaigns. We increased purchases with Scotiabank cards by 95%.
Esta campaña es una campaña para generar conciencia, para sensibilizar de que existen diferencias que no son justas y que hay que tomar acción sobre ellas.
Most importantly, on that day, women not only paid a lower price than men, but the Peruvian Congress also approved a law on wage equality, specifying that women should earn the same as men. The price of equality.
So, when we developed the idea, this idea was probably the first campaign that really addressed a real problem and a real issue of women in International Women's Day. We were the first brand in Peru to talk of these kind of things. What happened with this? The first thing is we change the conversation and we inspire change in the conversation because many brands start following us in the kind of a speech and the way to address and the way to work in this kind of actions. We start making a change of the discussion we were having. It's not more about how great they were, how lovely they were, how much they do for the society. It's how much they have to fight for, how far we are of gender equality today, how important it is today to fight for these kind of things. And this give us very great results. It was the first campaign and the first lion for our agency, and we were really proud. It was the first client for Scotiabank in the world So we're really proud of this campaign and the success that we have now. Then we have done several different campaigns, even today we have an award. It's called Equality Award. And what we have been doing in the last year, it's like we have invite very different kind of industries to participate and to showcase their cases of how they are fighting to eliminate gender gaps or erase gender gaps in our society. Many people have critics in this kind of subjects. Critics are all over the places, and so many people have asked us, but why are you doing this if you only represent 30% of the formal employees or employment, the workforce in the country? Because as the formal part of the workforce, we need to be gender equal. So the bank has been working very hard in the inside to be part of the outside too. Then in 2020, we have built and we developed a different campaign. This is called the Bank of Quality. And we have done with this is we understand that there's a product, one financial product, that really can evidence the problem of payment gaps between men and women. And that was payrolls. Payrolls, it's where you can find exactly how much a woman earned and how much a man earned between all our clients inside the bank. So knowing the data that we have inside the bank, first party data we have of our clients, we could address and we could help other companies to address this issue. I'm going to leave you with a case. It's an important case too for us. And after the case, we can discuss a little bit more.
Peru has one of the highest rates of the gender wage gap in Latin America, 29.6%. Scotiabank has been implementing successful initiatives, but the wage gap is still there. That is why, this time, we decided to eliminate it once and for all. Scotiabank presents Bank on Equality, a banking initiative that levels the wage difference between men and women. We measured authorized data to compare all of our female client salaries with that of a male counterpart, recognizing critical variables such as age, occupation, education, and geographic location. This measurement enabled us to see the specific wage difference for every one of our female clients. In turn, Scotiabank would automatically fill the salary gap with the bank's currency, Scotia Points, a digital currency that customers use as real money to purchase products and experiences. That is why on International Women's Month, we surprised every single new female client who opened a payroll account with an equal and fair salary. As a direct result, Scotiabank generated over 5 million in press coverage, a number never reached before by other campaigns. People started to express their support on social media. Even the Center for Global Development commented on our initiative.
Congrats to Scotiabank. Please keep up the good work in highlighting this important issue.
More than 60 companies have agreed to support our Bank on Equality pledge and keep fighting to reduce the wage gap. Most importantly, the National Superintendents of Labor Inspection finally placed a resolution that prohibits wage discrimination between men and women. In other words, women will obtain rightful fairness every end of the month. Bank on Equality, a loyalty program that eliminates the wage gap between men and women.
So, as you have seen, probably we are just one brand. And many of you and many people can think about how this is really changing the reality and the complexity of the context Peruvians live in. it's really not that much that we can move, but the important thing is we are keep doing it. When you see the statistics, when you see the data around gender equality and the backwards we're going to see because of the pandemic and everything else, it's very easy to say and to leave the fight. But we're keep fighting, and we're going to keep fighting, because as private companies, we need to address it to accelerate change. And that's part of our main objective today. How can we accelerate change in our society? Through what we do, what we can do, how we can approach to this kind of problems. We know we are talking about probably the last safe space for men, that it's economic power. Men in Peru tend to control women through money. So when we talk about money and gender gap and payment gap, it really makes men angry, very, very angry. Most of these campaigns have a very, very negative sentiment when we talk about open audiences with men and women. Men really tend to react really bad because they don't understand, they don't believe, they don't want to believe there's a payment gap in Peru. But we need to keep fighting. It's our job. It's our responsibility to keep inspiring change, and social growth through the communications actions we can address and we can achieve and we can do as part of our everyday job. So I invite everybody to doesn't be scared of data, doesn't be scared of pointing out social issues that can really make people react in a particular way, probably not the way you expect to, but we need to do it. We need to do it because it's the only way we really can achieve a better future for us, or for our daughters, and for the next generations, and to be a really, really equal world. Thank you very much for having me today. Really glad to see you. Bye-bye.
Well, thank you all very much indeed. To celebrate this very special launch, we've created a very special app. It's a virtual reality experience where you can literally visit every single country that's featured in the 2021 study. Well, you can get it on your desktop, your laptop, your tablet, your mobile phone. All you need to do is just download it from the URL that's on the screen here. Enjoy, explore. It's full of interest and insights, and we'll be refreshing the content frequently over the course of the next few months. So please do go back frequently. Earlier, I talked about the significance of countries being seen as brands. This is being increasingly realised right across the world, not just by business leaders, but by governments at the most senior of levels. I caught up with the Prime Minister of the Netherlands and asked him how important he believes country brands are. Mr. Prime Minister, what contribution do you think that retailing makes to the economy and society in general?
So many. I mean, it is the biggest employer in the Netherlands. 900,000 people are somehow connected to the retail sector, so it is huge in its economic impact. That means that many people, in many cases young people, start their working life experiences in the retail sector. It is also a place where you can learn how to be more entrepreneurial and how to start your own business. It is a sector in our economy which is very much focused on innovation and disruptive innovation. It is very much connected to the modern economy, to the internet, to online shopping. So there are so many positives. And it's also a place where people come together. It's also a sort of community place. In some of the stores, people drink a cup of coffee, meet friends, and then buy some stuff. So it has many, many impacts on society.
Mr. Prime Minister, you had a fantastic career at Unilever. You obviously know brands very well. Do you think country brands are as important as product brands?
Oh, they're crucial. And what I found in this job is that the brand of Amsterdam, the brand of the Netherlands, the brand of Eindhoven, or the whole commercial area around cities like Zwolle and Amersfoort are crucial for our international standing. And the fact that you can bike to school as a child, that it's relatively safe here, that there are so many possibilities when you like sports or culture. And I really learned to brand that much more than we did already.
One last question, Mr. Prime Minister. What advice would you give retailers today who are under a lot of pressure, under a lot of stress? Everything's changing very fast.
Yeah, but still, at the same time, you are in a fascinating sector. So enjoy what you are doing. We live only once. This is the real thing. This is not the. So you have to make the best of it. And there are so many opportunities for good salespeople, for good businessmen and women, to make use of all those opportunities which are out there, and do realize that you play a very important part in societies. You are really part of society.
Mr. Prime Minister, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow, I can't believe it. We've come to the end of our broadcast. We're almost out of time. I'd like to thank everybody who participated in today's broadcast. And just to remind you again, please do download the app and enjoy going virtually into every single one of our countries in this year's 2021 Best Countries Study. So from me, David Roth, thank you very much indeed. And Mike, thank you very much indeed as well.
My pleasure. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Thank you.
Well, have a great rest of the day. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. We really appreciate it.